Welcome back to The Growth Show. I'm your host, Whitney, and today I'm excited to welcome Milton Stokes to the show. Before I start the introduction, I just want to note that Milton is joining us in a personal capacity. The views he shares today are his own and do not necessarily represent those of his current employer. All right, without further ado, Milton. Milton is the Senior Director of Food and Nutrition at the International Food Information Council, where he focuses on science communication and consumer perceptions of health and nutrition. With over 20 years of consulting experience, he has worked with clients across public relations, marketing, communication, and stakeholder engagement. Throughout his career, Milton has been at the forefront of the food, agriculture, and nutrition industries, tackling urgent issues like food security, nutrition security, and sustainability. In this episode, we will be exploring the ins and outs of starting a consulting business, or just adding consulting as a service offering, from finding clients, building a portfolio, and how your online presence plays a part in all of this. You really are in for a great conversation. Milton is just a wealth of knowledge, and we had a lot of fun in this conversation. And stick around until the end because I have an exciting announcement about an event coming up that's really going to allow you to tap into a bunch of great resources to help you with every aspect of your business going into 2025. I can't believe we are near the end of 2024. So more on that after the interview. Okay, let's dive into my conversation with Milton. Welcome, Milton. Thank you so much for being here on the podcast.
Hey, Whitney, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
Yeah, so I cannot wait to talk about this topic of consulting because it's something that I really think is a great option for a lot of health and nutrition professionals, but I think maybe it can feel like a little intimidating or like, what is consulting? So we're going to get into all of that and just really excited to share your journey and your insights with the audience today. And while you're working at a full-time role now, I think you've been a consultant for many years. We know that. And I think actually some of your consulting work has even led to the role you're in now. So it can just kind of lead into other opportunities you may not even be aware of, right?
That's right. And, as I think about the trajectory of my career, I always start with where did I come from? And I grew up in the restaurant industry. My mom owned a restaurant in Kentucky, which is where I'm from. So I spent a good 10 years of my life working in that business, getting to know the business and just entrepreneurism. And I feel like it somehow is now in my blood from that point, even going forward. And it inspired me to want to do things for myself, to work for myself. And that's what led to consulting.
Okay. Yeah. And so let's expand upon your journey a little bit and what motivated you, even coming from restaurant and all of that, getting into the health and nutrition industry.
Yeah, sure. So I spent the 10 years working in the restaurant, and then I moved to Connecticut and did my dietetic internship and then to New York City where I worked for a contract food nutrition management company. So during the day I was a clinical dietitian and a clinical nutrition manager in New York City. And that was great. I got to practice dietetics. But what I really loved doing was communication and specifically writing. And I then pitched a magazine, Today's Dietitian magazine, actually, pitched them a story idea. They liked the idea and they hired me to proceed and write the article. And so I began my consulting as a writer. I started picking up more writing jobs as a freelancer. I made that a business, doing writing and editing for websites, newspapers, magazines, and ultimately had several book projects out of it. So I always had a day job during that period, like a regular job. And then nights and weekends, I would be writing. And the good part of all of it was the research that I did for my writing always helped in my day job. And my day job, working with clients and patients, always helped shape topics that I was going to write about. So they fed each other really, really well. Over the course of my entire consulting career, I did a lot of other things. So it wasn't just writing, but Whitney, I do think of my purpose as one centered around advancing health and nutrition through communication. So communication has often been a common theme of either my employment or my consulting.
Okay, I love that. And so when you started out and you mentioned that, okay, working in the restaurant with your mom, that kind of, you got the entrepreneurial bug even there, but were
Yes.
you, and then you got the full-time job, which like I didn't go in clinical, but also worked for a food service management company. And it took me a while to want to be an entrepreneur. So when you pitched to today's dietitian, were you already like, okay, I want to make this eventually like start my own business, or were you just like, I'm looking for an outlet because I'm in the hospital
Yeah.
and I need to be having something else to do?
Yeah, before I moved to New York, when I was in college, I was doing some community writing. I was writing for some local nonprofits, and none of it was for pay. It was all for let me write about food and nutrition, food science and food safety, and just the joy of food. And I fast forward to when I moved to New York, I was reading today's Dietitian magazine, and I saw that one of my friends and colleagues had written an article. I'm like, oh, I know this guy. I respect him, and I love the article, and I love this publication. I didn't realize that,
People like me.
like me could write. And so I pitched them, and I at the time wasn't really thinking beyond that. It was just like, this is today's Dietitian magazine. This is what I want to write about. This is what I want to do. Let me do this. And so there is a progression after that, but during that little phase of my life, I was only thinking like, oh, today's dietitian, here's my assignment, let me do a really good job.
Yeah.
So yeah, but there's much more after that happened.
Which I want to get into, but I just want to like acknowledge the fact that it can be one of those things where it's just put one foot in front of the other and just try something new and get kind of out of that comfort zone or feeling of imposter syndrome. I think it's so great when you can see other people doing the thing you want to do. I know for myself and in my career or just in my life, it's like if I see someone else that's kind of like me with my background doing the thing, it's like, oh, I can do that too. And so I think that's just like a message to anyone listening too. If you're thinking like, oh man, well, I can't do that. It's like, yes, you can, but you got to try and you got to kind of push yourself a little bit, and you don't know where it's going to lead, but you don't need to necessarily be thinking about, okay, 10 years from now, where is this going to go? It's just what's that first step and that thing you can do that's just exciting and interesting to you.
Yeah, just saying yes to one thing can lead to another, and that's exactly what's happened in my entire career. I don't know if you ever read Amy Poehler's autobiography.
No, like Bossy Pants or something, right? I
That's
should read it.
Faye, also very
Okay.
good. Highly recommend it. And I think Amy Poehler's is called, I think the title of hers was Yes, Please.
Okay.
But we'll have to get our, check that out.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, put it in the show notes. One of the quotes, and I'm paraphrasing, is Amy said, and I call her Amy because I know her personally. No, I
Yep.
don't. She said that she's worn so many hats over the course of her career that her head is really sweaty. Now that sounds gross, but just visualize like all these hats just layered one on top of the other, like super, super tall. And all those hats are different jobs, different opportunities, different experiences. And so I think about that often, and I do apply it to myself. I do feel like I've gotten to wear a lot of different hats, whether it's been in traditional, nutrition, dietetics, food service, food industry, communication, and whatnot. But just saying where I'm going with all this, because of what you said, Whitney, is just saying yes, and you don't always have to have a long-term strategy or long-term plan. It could just be, let's say yes to this project and see how it goes. And sometimes it's great and you learn a lot, and sometimes you learn you want to keep going, and other times it's like, no, once is enough. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, and it's great to do those things like you mentioned, writing for the nonprofit. I remember when I wanted to start doing more graphic design work, I started volunteering with the School Nutrition Services Dietetic Practice Group with the Academy, and just volunteering to do some of that to see, do I really enjoy this work? Let me get some experience. And actually now I consult for them and help them with more graphic design things and all of that. So you just never know where it's going to lead, but it's like trying on those different hats. And when you can do it in a low risk, like you're not quitting your job and then going and pursuing this other thing without even really knowing if you like it or not, but like those lower, smaller steps, because you just don't know.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Take a little chance, and I mean, there's more than one way to do this. And I have so many people to thank over the course of my career, but Jessica Setnick is a dietitian who's worked in eating disorders, and she's educated probably thousands of dietitians. And I was having a conversation or communication with her once about careers and entrepreneurism and advice and pearls of wisdom. And again, just paraphrasing, but she said something along the lines of, for career advice, don't ask people, if I should do something, like try this new writing assignment or go into private practice or take this new job. Ask them how I can go about it. Like, what advice do you have for me on how to make it happen? And so I think of her words often, and I usually quote her whenever I'm doing a presentation for dietetic students talking about the profession of dietetics. But if we can just think like how this might be possible, even if we don't know all the ins and outs, or as I said earlier, what the whole future looks like or how it's all going to play out, but how can I just get started? How can I dip a toe? I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah. And so for you, that starting was doing this article, pitching this article, and doing writing. And then you've alluded to other things that you've done in your consulting career. Can you share some examples of those?
Yeah, so when I was living in New York City, I feel like I had two careers. I worked during the day for a food and nutrition contract management company, as I stated, and then nights and weekends I was writing and working in communication. And so about a year after that Today's Dietitian piece, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics reached out to me and asked if I would do an interview with Men's Health magazine on, I don't remember what the topic was. I think it was something related to, who knows, it might have been mini meals, like small frequent meals. That was really popular at the time, and maybe it still is. And so I did the interview, and then I ended up doing a couple more interviews with the same editor at Men's Health. And finally one day I said, you and I know each other. You've called upon me to answer lots of questions. Can I write for you? I'd love to write for you. And he said, oh, okay, sure. And I'm leaving out a lot of details, but he's like, okay, sure. Here's what I need you to do. This is the first assignment I have. And the article that I ended up working on was very successful in that it had, for like a while, it was one of the most clicked on articles on their website.
Wow.
And it was something along the lines of like the 125 best foods of some sort. I don't remember, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But that publication, that clip from Men's Health, then gave me something that I could use with other magazines and say, look, I've got this clip with Today's Dietitian, I've got this clip with Men's Health, plus I did all these other media things. You can trust me. I know what I'm doing. I can meet deadlines. I can actually write, and I can work with an editor, and I can work with a team. And so that then opened the door to a lot of other freelance writing opportunities. So I really owe Today's Dietitian, and I owe a lot to Men's Health and to that editor, because when I look back on it all, I did it wrong. After that, I started reading books about how to become a freelance writer. And there are actually lots of books on this topic. I probably read 10 or 15 how to pitch magazines. And the way I did it is not how you're supposed to do it. So you're just, then, you have to write a formal pitch letter, include a self-addressed stamped envelope so they can mail you back their answer. And of course, today, I'm sure everything is email-based or who knows what, but I guess it didn't matter, and my editor didn't care. He was like, yeah, let's work together. And so I did a lot more writing for Men's Health and several other magazines and other outlets, as I said. So that's how that took off.
Wow. And so then you've done other things. You've stayed in the communications realm, but you've done other things besides writing as time has gone on as well, right? Or is it always kind of focused on writing?
I would say a lot of writing, but communication is probably the overarching theme. During that time I was living in New York, I also applied to and became a spokesperson for the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And back then it was called the American Dietetic Association, but now it's the Academy. And so I did tons and tons of media interviews on the topic of food, nutrition, health, food science, food safety. And so I had lots of exposure through that 3-year volunteer commitment, and met tons and tons and tons of freelancers. Some of them I'm still in touch with. I just did an interview earlier this week about cottage cheese. I feel like cottage cheese is having a moment.
I think so.
And yeah, thanks for laughing, because
No, I just remember watching Bethany Frankel eating it on TikTok yesterday, and I'm like, I don't know if that's a moment, but it's something.
Yeah, what is it? I mean, I've always liked cottage cheese, but now I feel like people are trying to put it into everything.
Yeah.
So I'm like, does it really go into all those things? So, Anyway, tons of media interviews, and I've maintained relationships with a lot of those folks. But I did this aspect of my what I think of as consulting and entrepreneurism centered around writing and doing my volunteerism as well with the academy as a spokesperson. But then that led to other opportunities, writing books. So I've written some consumer-oriented books on nutrition, health topics. I have some academic or educational, higher education oriented textbooks that I did with colleagues. And it just seemed like doing one writing thing led to another. And one editor was like, oh, you're working on that assignment, well, can you park that, and we want you to work on something else for us right now, and then you can go back to that other assignment. So it was just lots of that bouncing back and forth over the years. And one of the books was focused on unsaturated fatty acids, and I ended up getting a consulting contract with a PR firm related to a vegetable oil, communicating about the benefits of plant oils. And so these things were all connected. Even though it sounds like a lot of writing, it did open the doors to other engagements.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. I mean, and so, yeah, your consulting work has been, like you said, that umbrella of communication. And so I do some consulting as well, still in the school nutrition field. And I would say mine is more about like resource development and content development, implementation, and figuring out how the resources can be used by the stakeholders. Also, maybe looking at recipes a little bit, some nutrition education stuff. So I feel like the world is our oyster in terms of what we can consult on and what we can offer. Our expertise, I think it boils down, and you can correct me here or add to this, but I think it boils down to like what we really enjoy doing, because the choice is yours about what you want to consult and be hired to do. So you might as well pick something that's something you would just love to keep doing and do for a lot of different people. Yeah.
I agree with that, Whitney. And I mean, a lot of what I enjoyed and still enjoy doing involved just celebrating food and trying to find joy in food. I do feel like I came up in dietetics during a time, and it's probably still true even today, when dietitians were more viewed as the food police, and we were telling people, here's your list of the things you can't have. Here's what you have to avoid. And I wanted to make my work more about what can we add to the plate? How can we enjoy our favorite foods no matter what? And so I took that approach in my communication as much as possible. And I did a lot of recipe testing for magazines. So they would send me a recipe and they would say, this is from Chef so-and-so. Now we need you to demonstrate that it actually works. And some magazines have their own test kitchens, but I would consult for magazines that did not. And I'd have to go out and buy the ingredients, and I have to make the recipe several times and get as many people as possible in my little, bubble to try the recipe to make sure that it turned out as according to the instructions from the chef or the other dietitian who was working with the magazines. That's one thing that I did as part of my consulting. Another thing is a chef dietitian friend and I, we started a consulting company together when we were living in New York, and we did some recipe testing under that company, but we also did nutritional analysis. So when magazines or nonprofits, schools, a lot of different entities and organizations would want to know if their food meets certain standards and requirements, and so we would help them answer those questions. And that led us to then develop the menu for one of the first home meal delivery companies. Cool. And that was really exciting. Like back then, what it was is here's your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we had various diet plans, and people could choose however many weeks they wanted, and the food was delivered every morning before like the sun comes up in a refrigerated cooler outside their door in New York. And that company was eventually acquired by one of the other larger, more well-known health and nutrition related companies. But this was one of the first meal kit kind of the ancestors, if you will.
Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah, I've actually seen another dietitian consult on some meal kits and do some of this similar work. Yeah, I think it's like if you have a love for food and a passion for nutrition and making sure that people are getting the right the right resources, the right information, then this kind of work can be really great. And what I want to highlight something you mentioned too, that these places where you're consulting, it's basically outsourcing expertise, because they can't have a dietitian or a chef or, whatever the case may be, whatever your expertise is, they're not going to have that full time necessarily unless they're a gigantic company. And so they need to bring that expertise in, or maybe they need to, obviously the ones that are looking for consultants, that's great. But there's also ones that don't even know that they should have a dietitian consulting. They should have someone testing their recipes or whatever the case is. So I think there's two sides of it too. It's making sure that these companies out there have access to the experts who have the schooling, the background, the education, and also helping the ones who don't even know that they need it. It's like, oh yeah, I can be helping you and I can be making sure. And I think also, and I want to talk about like what's helped you get more clients and be successful. I think one of the things is showing how it can really help them with their bottom line, reaching their customers, their credibility, building that trust. Because if we just say like, well, it's because that's the right thing to do in science and all of that, they're businesses, so what's the reason that they would be wanting to bring someone in who has this expertise to help them? So
yeah. I think, Whitney, you're on to something. Many of the instances where I found myself involved, it's when a dietitian needed to be involved. So I'm an RD, and so my credentials, my background, my training, and my experience in food, all those things came together to provide what they needed, my various clients needed. And they were always food oriented or health and nutrition oriented clients, so they got it. I didn't have to explain a lot. They were sort of either passively or actively looking for someone like me, or I was actively seeking them. I sent out tons, when it comes to writing, I sent out tons of pitch letters. I'm writing an article this week, but I also sent out 10 ideas to various magazines. So I had something was in the pipeline pretty much all the time. Mm-hmm. And that may include negotiating, revising and editing and following up, not to mention doing interviews, because I said I was a volunteer as a spokesperson for the academy. So something was always going on. But I would use my RD to get myself in the door and then say, hey, I can help perform this service and I can do it a lot faster, or, I can meet your deadlines, whatever they are, because your team's already stretched. And I was working nights and weekends, and it just worked out,
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. I think it's always just so important to kind of be like, okay, what's in it for them? Mm-hmm. How can I make sure that they're seeing the value in my services aside from just obviously your expertise and background? So, and it's really helpful to know, because it sounds like you're networking and keeping in touch with people and leveraging your network has helped you find jobs and grow. But also you were just doing a lot of cold pitching too, which I know for a lot of us, it's kind of like, oh man, we don't want to do that, but it's just part of it. And
it's absolutely part of it. I was just doing that. And then, as I keep saying, one thing led to another. Like once I wrote an article for Newsweek magazine on peanuts, and I may have told you this, Whitney, last time we spoke. So I wrote about peanuts, and it was in the international edition of Newsweek. And like a week after it came out, I got a call from a radio station in Bogota asking if I would come on the radio to talk about peanuts. And you don't speak Spanish? No worries, we have a translator. So I was on air, they had someone communicating to me in English, and then they had somebody else conveying the information in Spanish. It was wild.
That's crazy.
But one thing would lead to another, just kind of like that. So there was pitching, but there was also just sort of, I don't know, you call it luck, or it just happened.
Well, I think it's, I think you don't give yourself enough credit. Of course, we never do. But I think you continue to put yourself out there every single time. And I think that's in business, we have to do that. Like you pitched yourself to today's dietitian and that opened more doors. And then when you were talking to Men's Health, you brought up some ideas and that opened more doors. And I don't know if you pitched to Newsweek or they came to you, but getting yourself out there, it does open these doors. But if you don't take that first step and keep taking those doors and going through those doors, even if you're a little nervous or scared or not feeling like you're ready for it, keep doing it, because it's going to open new doors as you keep going.
Oh, absolutely. That's wonderful advice, just to help people to think, just keep trying something, keep doing something every little bit, even if you did it wrong are not the best, most appropriate or proper way. I think all those are learning opportunities, and those are all reasons that I think I was able to be successful as a consultant, as a writer, and an entrepreneur. Another reason, I mentioned luck. I'll also say a lot of the publishing industry at that time, and maybe still today, I don't know, but at that time, in the early 2000s, and they would move around. So an editor would be at a magazine for a year or so, and then he or she would go to another publication. And I still maintain my relationship and contact with them. And so it would often open up a new outlet for me.
Yeah.
And so I had multiple ways that I was thinking of this. I was like working my network, producing artifacts that other people were going to see, and then just very frequently pitching and proposing and brainstorming. And I surrounded myself with one of my dear friends and colleagues and business partners when we were in New York. The person I worked with to develop the menu for that home meal delivery service. He was very creative and visionary, and so wonderful person to brainstorm with. And that I've always had people like that in my life, and I think that's been super, super important. I don't always have the best ideas or the greatest ideas, but maybe I have a version of it, and I can use my brain trust and talk to other people and tweak my ideas. And I've been super thankful to benefit from just informal consultations with friends and colleagues.
Yep. I think like being able to just talk things out. And if you're not even really sure, like if you're even at the starting point now and like, I'm not even sure what I would want to consult on, just have a conversation with someone and just talk through the things that you really love doing or the things that have brought you joy or the things you really hate doing. And yeah, I think getting that feedback and brainstorming with someone and just kind of getting it all out so that it's not in your head swirling around too is also helpful.
Yes, yeah. My consulting also, it took a turn. I started a private practice as I moved. I left, well, it was during my transition of moving away from Connecticut, New York City, back to Connecticut, and I started a business, an LLC, and became credentialed with insurance companies and was providing one-on-one and small group medical nutrition therapy and dietitian services.
Yeah.
And so that was another entrepreneurial thing that I did, and that was during a time when I was transitioning out of a full-time job and then going back to graduate school full-time.
Oh, okay.
And had a teaching assistantship, and so I was having my business and ended up working with several dietitians in that endeavor. So I just mentioned that, Whitney, because a lot of what I've been talking about so far is centered around writing and publication, and there's this whole private practice element as well.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you bring it up too, because I think it's important to note that you don't have to just say, I'm now a consultant and that's all I do, or I am just in private practice and that's all I do. I think for many of us, we like having a little difference of, work and different things that we've got our hands in. And also I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I mean, being an entrepreneur, the income can go up and down and up and down.
Oh, yes.
But I think when sometimes you can get these consulting contracts where it can be more stable. You can maybe get a retainer or have something where it's more of a long-term, even if it's a 6-month contract or something like that, at least then okay, at the 3-month or the 2-month when it's up, I'm going to be looking for more work and trying to look for some more long-term things. So can you speak to any of how it's impacted just from either a stability or predictability or just kind of that mix of entrepreneurship of how we get our income?
Yes, it's such an important question. And as you were asking it, my mind went to sort of a little bit of a flashback to when I was living in New York and back to the writing days. I had some writing opportunities with a couple of weight loss, weight management oriented brands. And those opportunities became columns, like regular columns. And so one was a monthly column, one was a weekly column. And so I had that stability and I enjoyed that regular income. And it also kept me, I guess I could say maybe it kept me on my toes of trying to think like, okay, what's my next column going to be? And I would just always be thinking, what do I think the public wants to read about? And how is that going to shape what am I going to communicate about? And it led me to ask questions and just sort of taking notes. I rode the subway in New York, so I was pretty much had an hour or 2 hours every day of just sitting on a train. So that's when I would be like jotting down ideas and thought starters. But the consistency of those two columns, that made a huge difference. And the last couple of years before I took my current full-time employment position, last couple of years I was consulting with a PR agency and again with a contract management company, food and nutrition company. And PR, that was PR, communication, and the contract management company, that was for talent acquisition, actually. So I diversified my so-called portfolio.
Yeah.
And I had these consistent clients every week. Amazing to have that consistency. And I love the projects that I was doing, and I love the people that I worked with and the topics that I was focused on. But, those were time-limited engagements and came to a close, but it was wonderful while I was getting to do it. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think that that's just one of the reasons that I like talking about consulting, even in this space of entrepreneurship. And a lot of people listening are service providers and they're maybe starting private practices, doing consulting, counseling, and all of that. But I still think that consulting, it doesn't have to be your full business. It doesn't have to take over everything. But I think if you can get some contracts that work for you and it's work you enjoy doing, and you can maybe look to have them be a more stable source of income, especially these are businesses. So they usually are able to spend more money than a consumer hiring you, for your services. It can just help even out that all those different streams of income that are coming in and build a little bit more stability and give you a little bit more breathing room as you're kind of growing your business or deciding, what you're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I when I was in private practice, that really wasn't the biggest financial success for me. I learned a lot about business. I learned a lot about do's and don'ts of marketing, and I learned a lot about contracting and negotiating and just working with insurance companies. And my practice was mostly insurance based. I had some out-of-pocket payers, but mostly 90% insurance. And what I found myself spending most of my time on was actually paperwork. And
I've heard that, especially with the insurance.
And it was like, okay, I'm really not this is not financially making ends meet. This is not a sustainable business for me. And so I really revisited the idea of diversification, and that's where I started to do more in writing and other types of consulting. And teaching as an adjunct. I mean, I was picking up all these little different projects over the course of my career as a dietitian and as a consultant. But another point I wanted to share with you is for people who are thinking about consulting, it's sort of the same question of, I want to be a private practice dietitian, but when should I do it? Do I need to wait? I always tell people, if you want to do something, then take whatever action makes the most sense for you to do it. If that means getting a website tomorrow, or getting your business cards, or start the credentialing process with the insurance companies, whatever it is that you want to do, I would say proceed and do it. You don't have to wait until everything's perfect, because if you wait, the rules are going to change, the economy's going to change, everything's going to change, and you're never going to be ready. Maybe it's sort of like parenting, I don't know. But I would say don't wait and try little bits of this and that. So diversification, which has really served me well throughout my career. I've been in consulting since 2000. I mean, if you count the restaurant years, I've worked in the restaurant business from 1989 until 1999. So I had that block of entrepreneurism. But 2000, I became an RD and also had a full-time job, which I've said a few times now, and started my consulting. So I've had a consulting business for more than 25 years, and I flex that up and down based on what's happening. I have a full-time job right now, so I don't do that much consulting. I was teaching a class as an adjunct, and that 6-year period came to a close, and I just have, one other project that I do every quarter, a few hours, and so it's quite manageable. But if I weren't working full-time, I would flex my consulting up, and I would start telling as many people as possible, hey, things are going to change for me, or this is what I'm thinking about. If you're looking for somebody, please keep me in mind. So that's just sort of kind of what I think about of the span of my career, and and some of the things that I learned to help me make it all work as a consultant.
Yeah. Oh, that's such great advice. Yeah, I think it's great to get the insights of like how it can ebb and flow and how you look at it and keep those relationships still there. And you can tap into your network and just different seasons of life. And also just what you were saying about like just get started, because I know, yeah, I definitely waffled for a while starting my business. And one of my first things was getting my business card and going to Fancy. I went to the academy and I was like, I'm going to start telling people that I have a business. And it was like that one step, that I needed to do. And then, yeah, go ahead.
I think that's really profound. And, I was laid off from a full-time job in 2021. I was working for an ag tech startup company, and 40 people got laid off one day. And one of my friends reached out through LinkedIn and he said, okay, what you need to do right now is update your LinkedIn and say that you're like back consulting full time. And his point was what you just said. You start telling people, and you use whatever medium is available, whether it's in person or digital or on the internet, whatnot. Start telling your network that this is what you're available to do, and then that kind of gets you going. It's momentum.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you have to put it out into the universe if you want the universe to respond. You can't be silent. Keep it a secret. And you mentioned website briefly, and we're not going to like go into websites too much, but obviously, I do work on websites and all of that. And one thing I would say, I don't know that website for you necessarily was a big part of how you grew your business. But I think what I would say is like, if you are really making this be a big part of your business, then having a part of your website talking about what you're doing and your background and all of that is going to be critical, because it's going to allow other people to find you. Yeah.
Yeah, so in the 2000s in New York, my friend and colleague, the dietitian chef that I mentioned earlier, he had a wonderful website. And so we got a lot of business actually through his website.
Okay.
Most of my work as a writer and a recipe tester, that was word of mouth, that was conversations, editor to editor, working those networks. But when I opened a private practice, I did work with an amazing web designer. Her name is Jessica Perilla. I don't know if she still does design, but I had a website, she built it, and I got a lot of business clients, like medical nutrition therapy clients, private practice patients came through that website. They found me that way. I also used that website to post a clip to every single time I was in the media, either having done an interview or I wrote something in a magazine, newspaper, another website. So she built this amazing just library for me of all of these clips. I mean, there's hundreds of clips. It was just overflowing.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like proof that, as I said earlier, when an editor sees like, oh, you really can do this. And so, yes, we will hire you. We will take a chance on you. That, I think, helped me in my writing career for sure.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. I think like word of mouth and referrals, those are things that are always great and helpful, but having that proof somewhere and on a place like people, I think having your LinkedIn profile updated is really important, but you want to like go deeper and kind of have a home that's your own. And so your website can be that spot. And then two, if you're doing this writing work or you're appearing in the media, having people share your website and link back to your website, that is just going to boost your own website's credibility in the eyes of Google and all of that. So it's a great opportunity to just have a spot that's your own and be sending people there. And, you just never know. One of our clients that we've worked with her website, she wasn't even pursuing this company that approached her. She just had something on her website. She launched her website, was sharing it around, and then they went to her website unbeknownst to her and then reached out, and now they have a contract.
Oh, wow.
So you just don't know who's looking for you and looking for help too. And if you don't put it on your website, if you don't put it out there, like you were saying, if you don't tell anyone about it, you're never going to get hired for it because no one knows.
There's something for my career that it's been about the networking and the informing peers, friends, colleagues. I often joke that when I try to, at least over the last few years, when I've tried to pitch new business, I haven't been successful, or at least not in the way that I wanted to be. Pretty much everything that came my way was through, not everything, but most of it was through word of mouth. Like, oh, I know Milton. He worked in agriculture, communication, and food systems for 10 years. He'd be great to help this particular PR agency pitch for new business related to an ag biological product or solution. And so that's how I got a lot of the consulting as well. Just, I think the point is put it out there some way. Put it out there verbally, put it out there, email your friends and colleagues, get a website, put it on your social media, wherever you need to put it. It needs to live somewhere, and people will pick it up.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Well, you're full of great advice. Is there any other advice that you would give to people that are just starting out, or any things that you've learned that you would either do or never do again?
Oh my gosh. Well, I've never made any mistakes, so there's never anything that I would know. I've made lots of mistakes over the course of my career, and they've been sometimes embarrassing and challenging, but always a chance to learn. So I would say practice curiosity as much as you can. That has really helped me just in collecting information, in asking questions, in trying to learn more about where are you coming from, or tell me more. Why did you say that? And whatever it is. And I've spent a lot of my career communicating about very contentious topics that people feel very passionately about either loving or hating. And so let me understand where you're coming from. And if people can do that a little bit more, if you can practice curiosity, whether it's related to your business or to your education, formal education, your career, your personal life, the political landscape here in the United States, I mean, whatever it is, to try and understand where's this other person coming from, then maybe you can better design a solution. You can be creative and innovative and come up with what might be the next business opportunity for yourself. So that's probably my number one piece of advice. I once heard a dietitian, Sherry Bork, say that the number one tool in life is the ability to ask a question. It's the question, just asking questions. And I felt so validated when I heard her say that, even though it's super simple. I love asking questions. I love collecting information. I love getting answers and growing my knowledge. And so I think that really helped me, and I perhaps can help others who are thinking about entrepreneurism.
Yeah. I think that's perfect. And speaking of questions and connection and learning, people want to ask you any questions or connect with you or anything like that. I think LinkedIn probably is the best place for that.
LinkedIn is the best. Milton Stokes, that's my place and that's my little corner of the universe. So feel free to connect or message me there. I'm on other social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram, but those are mostly where I post pictures of my kids or talk about, birthdays and that sort of thing. But LinkedIn is probably the best.
That's great. Yeah, I think the advice of asking questions and learning from others and just getting those perspectives is just such a great piece of advice to end with. So thank you so much, Milton, for being here and for sharing your time and expertise and background with us. And yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Whitney. I've been looking forward to this, and I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise. Thanks. Okay, that's a wrap on today's episode of The Growth Show. A huge thank you to Milton Stokes for sharing his insights on self-employment, consulting, and really believing in what's possible and taking the next step, whatever that means for you. That was a fantastic conversation. I hope you are feeling inspired. Now, if you found today's episode valuable, be sure to follow Milton on LinkedIn to stay updated on his latest work and insights and to connect. And if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who might benefit from it. It would mean a lot. And now for my announcement. So if you've been with me for a while, you may be familiar with my Thriving Business Bundles. These are a great opportunity to learn about new experts and thought leaders and grab resources from them. Think like templates and mini courses, workbooks, webinars on topics just ranging from setting your prices, pursuing new income streams like memberships or brand work, cover legal stuff, financial stuff, marketing, SEO. I'm always so grateful and impressed by what our contributors generously give away in our bundles. And I have great news. We have our next one, our Thriving Business Holiday Bundle, is kicking off next week. So here's how it works. Starting on Monday, December 9th through Sunday, December 15th, you can opt in on the bundle from a landing page. You just drop your email. And here's the great thing. When you opt into the bundle, you get access to all of the resources inside. You do not have to pay for them. This bundle is free. We do have a paid bundle too, but I'm talking about the free bundle. And our contributors are giving away their paid resources within this bundle for free, but it's for a limited time. So you need to opt into the bundle next week, and then you will have a few weeks to actually access and sign up for the resources that you want. And all of them are for free. Here's just a preview of what you'll find inside. So there is an AI Secrets for Marketers workshop, a course about uncovering your hidden skills to uncover what your business really needs in order to succeed, a checklist to help you start your nutrition business, a behavior change planning workshop to help your clients be more successful with their behavior changes, and so much more. There are dozens of resources within this bundle. So you get to go in there and pick and choose the ones that you want, and you can get them all for free. So mark your calendar. Next week, the bundle kicks off. You only have a week to opt in so that you can access all the resources. And if you want to be sure that you get an email from me when the bundle actually begins, drop your email at whitneybateson.com/pod-newsletter, and you will get on our email list. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you next time on The Growth Show.